Another week, another royal trip. This week, we joined King Charles and Queen Consort Camilla as they embarked on their historic first joint state visit abroad. Chaotic scenes of civil unrest pushed the French government to pull the plug on the first leg of the trip, which had been due to start in Paris on Sunday. Instead, the royal couple flew into Berlin on Wednesday afternoon with 2 Luftwaffe Typhoon jets escorting the flight as it entered German airspace. Having traveled on a fair few royal flights over the years, we can't remember a time when the aircraft received such a reverential welcome. But it should have tipped us off that Germany was going to pull out all the stops in the days ahead. There was a clear structure to the trip, with Day 1 focused on pomp and pageantry, Day 2 concentrated on politics and the final day centered around reconciliation and the future. The overarching theme illustrated the unshakable bond between the two nations. The royal couple certainly had a packed schedule, but there were a few engagements focused on Ukraine and the environment that spoke to their priorities. In the long and remarkable story of our two countries, there are many chapters yet unwritten. Let us fill these with the restless pursuit of a better tomorrow. The legacy of our past, and the great promise of our future, demand nothing less, Charles said Thursday while making history as the first British monarch to address the German parliament while it was in session. By Friday, the weather had taken a turn, but that didn't dampen spirits. Hundreds of well-wishers braved wet conditions for hours ahead of the pair's arrival from Berlin at Hamburg Dammtor station at lunchtime. Their patience was rewarded when the King and Queen Consort greeted members of the crowd after viewing the nearby Kindertransport Memorial, a sculpture that commemorates the 1938 rescue of about 10,000 Jewish children from the Nazis by evacuating them to Britain. The crowds only got bigger as the day went on. Massive numbers turned out at the city's town hall. While in Germany's northern port city, Charles and Camilla also visited St. Nikolai Memorial Church, which was destroyed during World War II. In July 1943, Allied forces began an aerial bombing campaign of Hamburg, Operation Gomorrah. In just 8 days, 42,000 civilians were killed and 37,000 were injured. This was always going to be a historic trip for the new British sovereign, but he was under a lot of pressure to get it right. There could be no distractions or slip-ups, especially after the French portion of the trip was scrapped. In the end, it was a faultless visit. Charles didn't hold back or shy away from traumatic experiences, both historical and more recent, for the two nations. Given their shared history, there could have been some awkwardness, but he instead acknowledged the complex Anglo-German relationship. The targeted diplomatic efforts will be welcomed back home by UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, whose government sent Charles on his inaugural state visit. He will have been keen to see if deploying the King's soft power diplomacy could help reset relations with European partners post-Brexit. The strategy seems to have paid off. Charles was well received by politicians and the public alike. He was praised in local media, particularly for his firm grasp of the German language. Many had wondered how Charles would fare on the world stage when he became king, after spending more than 7 decades as prince and heir to the throne. This week marked the first opportunity we've had to see him interacting as head of state overseas. He showed how adept he is in wielding soft power and being a unifying diplomatic force and representative for Brand Britain.